hace, pierna derecha, directo al arco, ¡golazo! ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Good day, good night, and welcome to Soccer Today for March 6th, 2018. It's Tuesday, Duane. We're just coming off from the first Monday of the year. Big Monday, big show yesterday. If you missed the action last weekend, I suggest you listen to yesterday's show to catch up on all the games that happened in Week 1 in Major League Soccer. We'll have the Player of the Week announced in a few hours. But Duane, what caught our attention for today's show? There's a lawsuit. We'll talk about this a little later. It's something we've talked about a few months ago. There's a law that exists in Columbus, in Ohio, since the Cleveland Browns first left. And that law, wasn't put into effect. And we'll talk this into the second segment. But to start the show, Duane, today, the League of Nations. No, I'm not talking about the ancestor to the nations, United Nations. I'm not talking about what happened after World War I. I'm talking about what's going on right now in CONCACAF.
That's a good history. I watch a lot of history documentaries. I do appreciate the League of Nations precursor to the UN reference there. That's some good history you just threw back to. The CONCACAF League of Nations has been this idea that Vic has had for a while, that he's been putting out there. We haven't had a lot of details on it. A lot of us that sort of follow it pretty closely have been able to sort of suss out probably how it's going to work. But yesterday afternoon, we got our first real indication of what some of the details might actually look like. We'll go through them here in a second. But before we do that, the idea behind this is to basically get, you look at CONCACAF, and if you're, let's say, like Canada struggles to get games, right? Yeah. But we do get the occasional game. Imagine if you're Dominica. You're not going to get a lot of friendlies. No, you're not. Right?
And when you do, you have to travel often, and there's a lot of expenses, so it's like a vicious cycle. You don't want to have too many friendlies because you don't have the budget to get there.
Well, yeah, and even with Canada, that when you talk about the home game stuff, too, and I know a lot, this is maybe the number one complaint I get when I talk about Canadian national team friendlies. Honestly, this really is one of the ones that's right up there, is that a lot of fans that they want to watch Canada, they want to support Canada, and they say, well, why do they never play here? Like, why are we going to play New Jersey and New Jersey? We're not going to play New Jersey, although that might be a competitive fixture.
We might win. We should play New Jersey. Come on, I want to play Shore.
I wouldn't count on it, but
we still find a way to lose.
New Zealand, we're going to play New Zealand in Spain. They go, well, why are you going to play New Zealand in Spain? And we'll go, well, and the answer is money. It costs a lot of money to host a team here.
Yeah, the answer is why can't flight from New Zealand to Canada? It's expensive. Cut the distance in half. Let's meet in Spain.
Yeah, in the past when Canada's had big name home friendlies, the famous, which is now over 20 years old, the famous Brazil's friendly in Edmonton. I can't believe that's 20 years old. Oh, my God. Anyway, it's more than 20. It's 23, 24 almost. But nonetheless, it's the reason that happened is because of USA 94, right? Like that's the teams were up here. They needed preparation. Canada sort of offered them, a kind of direct physical opponent that would prepare them for a group in their stage. We played the Netherlands for the same reason during that stretch at Varsity Stadium here in Toronto. So those friendlies, they existed only because of circumstance. To have the big name like that come up in any other circumstance, they couldn't play another friendly all year. That would be it. They blow the budget on that. The League of Nations is going to force countries to play friendlies in both. Canada will get out of these first 4 games that I'm going to talk about in a minute. They will get 2 home dates out of that, and that means that they, CONCACAF, you got to play them, and there's going to be some money that assists with that, and they're also going to have to go down to Aruba, maybe. We don't know yet. We're going to find out tomorrow who they're going to play, and those countries will get those friendlies that they wouldn't otherwise get. If you think about it, we lament here, as I said, Canada, but if you're, Dominica, Aruba, Cayman, Turks and Caicos, the U.S. Virgin Islands, I'm just reading countries here off the bottom of this list, you're only getting 2 games per cycle. Not year, cycle. Like, you get your qualifying games and that's it. So this is an opportunity to sort of address that. I like this idea. I think it's, if you're Mexico, the U.S., you may lament the fact that you don't get to schedule Argentina as much anymore. although there are going to be two FIFA dates open per year that are going to allow you to make those big name friendly schedules, and I think that's just going to force you to make them seem more precious. If you're U.S. and New Mexico, you're also going to play each other home and away likely each year too. So that's going to be something that will help you continue to have that rivalry grow. But I like the overall idea, Kevin. I don't know what we've talked about it before, but I'll get your thoughts more on what you think here.
Well, it kind of makes sense too when you're looking at what the UEFA, the European Football Association, is doing. It's kind of like the same thing too, where the UEFA League of Nations, the league in Europe, where you do have 4 pot or 4 division, 4 leagues, call it whatever you like, 4 categories, A, B, C, D, and you have like England, Belgium, Germany, France, and like the first one, and then so on and so forth. And it's just a bit of the same concept. And for CONCACAF, the benefit that I see is, I'll put it up on the video for a second here for people that are watching the video screen, is the rules of the CONCACAF ranking index is now it's now on paper. It's like this tournament is almost made to make sure we, as a continent, that's why I say we, CONCACAF, gather more points for the ranking system, which in total would give CONCACAF a bit easier time to, once they get there, to be seeded and to maybe have more results at the actual World Cup, but to make sure the coefficient down the road, you have more teams and all that. Your ranking is needed, and because of the lack of friendlies, like you mentioned, that Canada, as an example, has been playing over the years, it's difficult for Canada to rack those FIFA ranking points like in Europe they do for the qualifying system. Just because it's a different type of system, they garner more points for European teams, and you see those teams dominate the rankings all the often. So there's a positive for me, for Canada at least, as an example. We should be able to break the top 10, the top 100 a lot easier with those games because of that ranking system and those points, and the fact that those games, even though they're kind of friendlies, they're competitive games technically, so they're worth more in the eyes of FIFA than just international friendlies.
Yeah, no, exactly. Look, the other thing too, I'm looking at this CONCACAF national team ranking, which I assume is what you have up there right now, and we see Canada in its 7th, the United States in its 2nd. I think this is like a fairer look at where these teams stand up based on what they actual play, what the actual skill level is compared to the FIFA ranking, where the FIFA ranking, particularly when it relates to CONCACAF, it overvalues those the Caribbean Cup of Nations tournament. So you'll see Canada drop below, the winners of those, like St. Kitts and Nevis and stuff like that. Like you see them right below that. And even though Canada handles those teams when they play them fairly regularly, right? Like, I mean, we make fun of Canada all the time here, but they beat St. Kitts, right? They're not that bad.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you see them in at 7th right now, they're just a shade below Jamaica. I think that's probably a fair place to put it. You look at Mexico as like clearly the number 1. I think that's probably accurate. And you look at the United States and Costa Rica in a virtual tie, and I think that's probably accurate right there. Obviously the U.S. has missed the World Cup, and a lot of American fans want to burn the house down and suggest that they're not even that high. But no, they are. They're the second best team in CONCACAF. But Costa Rica is right there. I like to look at this ranking system, and that's what it is. All right. Shall we talk about this actual thing and what we're going to find out tomorrow and what we found out yesterday?
Go ahead, Duane. The floor is yours.
All right. Yesterday is a bit more confusing than what we're going to find out tomorrow. Tomorrow, there's at 10 a.m. in Miami, they're going to have a press conference and a draw for the qualifying portion for the first fully official League of Nations. The first fully official League of Nations is going to launch in March of 2019. They haven't said it officially yet, but anyone who does math, basic math, will understand if you have 41 teams in the Confederation, 3 groups of 10 and 1 group of 11 is probably what they're going to do with that. They've already said, just by virtue of this, if you read this press release, they say, and I'm going to read it directly here, by virtue of having qualified for the hex of the FIFA World Cup Russia 2018, Costa Rica, Honduras, Mexico, Panama, the United States, and TNT earned the right to be seated directly into the quote-unquote top tier of the inaugural Nations League. So top tier suggests exactly what we've always sort of assumed is what they're going to do, is that they'll have tiers, and they'll likely have promotion and relegation between those tiers. So there you go, American pro rel lovers. You're finally going to get pro rel in the United States, albeit at an international stage. And so that's what
I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say, no, I was going to say, Dwayne, one thing that I'm wondering, right? We have this discussion often, club and country, and if we're looking at the game as a whole, especially in North America, the club side has really grown a lot over the last X amount of years. Is this League of Nations almost to hype up the countryside, the international side of the game in our part of the world too? Because we're going to have more quote-unquote competitive game in our international level. We should see more of our international stars with our countries. So is this League of Nations, this tournament, this competition, this trophy, there's probably going to be a trophy at the end. Is it to make sure that we don't forget about the countryside of the game?
Maybe a little bit, but I think that it's, well, cynically speaking, it was a way for Victor Battagliani to solidify his support in the Caribbean for his CONCACAF presidential campaign. I mean, there's a lot of votes in the Caribbean, and the Caribbean has the power and did have the power for years and years and years to sort of elect the political leaders of CONCACAF. That's why Jack Warner was able to have such control for so long, is because he controlled that block. So this was one way of saying, look, you are underserved. As much as you were voting for your guy in the past few elections, basically it wasn't helping the football in the region as a whole. You were just helping those guys. And we don't need to belabor what was happening there, because we all remember and we all know that there was corruption that was widespread and there was nepotism and all that sort of jazz. But this is a more positive way to sort of solidify the Caribbean's vote. You're giving them friendlies. You're going to give the top Caribbean teams, your Jamaicas, your Haitis, maybe even, like, and Haiti might be a perfect example of a team that could really benefit in this.
Yeah, they could be the top group.
So they could be playing regular fixtures against the United States and Mexico. So that's going to be something that, you look at countries like Guadeloupe that aren't official FIFA countries yet. I think they're being encouraged to be so, but nonetheless, they're sitting in there, and what will be a second group will still give them good fixtures and regular fixtures against teams that they compete and sell and make money, in a good way by selling their stadiums and promoting their players and giving their players opportunities to play consistently. And that's going to bring the overall, as the tide rises, all ships rise with the tide, or whatever that saying is. I always screw up, at any rate.
When the tide raises all ships. There you go. Tide raises all ships.
Yeah, there you exactly. So that's what this is about. At any rate, to get back into the to the nuts and bolts of this. So what you're going to do is you're going to have this, through this qualifying campaign, you're going to sort this into tiers, likely 4 tiers, as I said, which will then begin play in March. We don't know the details of how they're going to play, because 10 teams is a bit wieldy, so maybe they're going to have 2 groups in there, 5 within those 10-team groups. Maybe they'll have kind of an imbalanced schedule like they're doing with the qualifying process. Who knows? We don't know. We'll find out tomorrow. But what we do know about this qualifying process is that there are 4 pots that are going to be drawn to create a schedule that's an imbalanced schedule, but they're going to use a computer program that's going to make it so that all teams are playing sort of equal strength throughout it.
Yeah.
And I'll quickly go through the pot A's. And yes, Canada finally has legitimately qualified for a pot A here.
Yeah, that won't happen too often.
The top 8 ranked participating teams that are not given the automatic bye are Jamaica, Canada, Haiti, El Salvador, Martinique, Cuba, French Guiana, and Guadeloupe. So they will be in pot A. Pot B is Nicaragua, St. Kitts and Nevis, Curacao, Suriname, Antigua, Dominican, Bermuda, Guyana, and Belize. C is, well, we won't go through them all. C is a bunch of islands, and D is a bunch of islands too that are a little worse. What is going to happen is that you're going to have a draw, which is going to place you in a slot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on for each of A, B, C, D, and E, or A, B, C, and D, and pots D and B and C have 9. So they're going to be slotted in there, which is then going to give, basically, number 1 is going to play number 1, number 2 is going to play number 2, but it's going to be mixed up. So, like, on the first match day, this is confusing, I realize, but it actually makes sense when you look at it on paper. On match day 1, which is going to be in September, a pot A team will play a pot D team. So Canada, to use a Canadian example, because this is the team who we're mostly talking about, they're going to play one of the following in September: Cayman Islands, Turks and Caicos, Montserrat, the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Martin, St. Martin, Antigua, or the British Virgin Islands. That will be one of their opponents on that first match day. So that's the type of game that you're going to get. They should win that game, right? But they need to win that game if they want to get to Pot A, because we want to get to Pot A because we don't want to be playing Cayman Islands regularly, right? So in match day 2, which is in October, you will play someone from Pot C, which is going to be one of Bonaire, Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia. It's going to be St. Vincent and the Grenadines because we always play them. St. Lucia, Barbados, Puerto Rico, Bahamas, or Dominica and Aruba. So that will be your second opponent. Again, very winnable competition. You need to win that game because you want to finish in whatever order it is. And again, I think it's going to be the top 4 teams in this thing. So on match day 3, Pot A is going to play Pot B. That means you're going to play one of Nicaragua, St. Kitts and Nevis, Curacao, Suriname, Antigua and Barbuda, Dominican Republic, Bermuda, or Guyana and Belize. So that will be your opponent in match day B. A little harder, but still winnable. And then finally, you're going to play another match day A or Pot A opponent on your final match. So you're going to play one from every area. They're going to seed you based there's how many teams in this? There's 35 teams going to be involved in this. So you're going to be seeded 1 to 35 and placed into your leagues for the full League of Nations, which is going to start in March. So again, the rest of the Pot A. So Canada will play one of Jamaica, Haiti, El Salvador, Martinique, Cuba, French Guiana, or Guadeloupe in the final match day. So look, Canada should win all 3. Maybe they draw Jamaica and it's a bit tough. Haiti's a bit tough. El Salvador's a bit tough. The other all winnable, right? So they should go 3-0 in this. That will boost their FIFA points, as we say. Should put them in Pot A. Or League A or League One, whatever they decide to call it, which will mean they're going to get regular friendlies against the U.S. and Mexico and Costa Rica and all of the teams that they need to beat. And Honduras, they're going to go down and play in Honduras more. This is a good thing for Canada.
And the way our national team is looking as well, those will be maybe John Herdman's is the first competition as a manager, as a director of the national team program and head coach, will be taking the helm of this team for this entire competition. So you do have a lot of talking point for those games that will be coming up in September. And it's, again, international friendlies, but with a competitive twist. So technically, we should have a bit more. The call-up should accept the calls. You should have a more A lineup than a B, C lineup that we see sometimes in Camp Disney. We see in early January. So, no, it should be a positive aspect for the entire region.
And one final thought on this, too. There's a lot of people that also are concerned that we don't play in places like Moncton. We don't play outside of Toronto, Vancouver, and, just recently Montreal. Playing the Cayman Islands in Canada, you can play that game in Moncton. You can play that game in Winnipeg. You can play that game in a lot of places that are outside the major metropolitan centers. You probably should.
Fort
and I think
McMurray.
this is also
bring them
wherever.
where it's cold.
Well, I mean, they should be able to beat them wherever they play them. But the point being, you can spread the game around a little bit more. I mean, there's a lot of movement at that Halifax Stadium. If it gets up and going for 2019, play games out there. Play them everywhere you can, because you're going to have, finally, for the first time in my adult life, consistent home friendlies, and that is the greatest thing from a Canadian perspective about this League of Nations.
And it makes a lot of sense. Speaking of making a lot of sense, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the Save the Crew and the lawsuit of Ohio.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at Soccer Today SPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.
Yesterday, the governor of Ohio has announced that the city of Columbus and the state of Ohio have deposited a lawsuit versus Precourt Sports Ventures to stop them from moving the team from Columbus to Austin if this is going to happen. This is the law that was created in Ohio and Columbus, especially Ohio, because it had to do with Cleveland when Art Blondell took his team and moved them to Baltimore. So now the question is, will it hold up in court?
Yeah, the Blundell law is what they call it informally. The gentleman who served the lawsuit is the Attorney General of Ohio. His name is Mike Duane, so it'll be a fine wine if they succeed for the Columbus fans. Anyway,
Yes.
Sorry, hashtag bad puns for the win. Yeah, look, we talked about this before, and it is certainly a very interesting approach to try and stop this. The law sort of details that any team that has received public assistance must provide the public, basically the government, with 6 months' notice, and this is key to what's happening in Columbus, and of an opportunity, a fair opportunity to purchase said team from that owner so that they can prevent the move from happening. I like the law. I think it's a smart law, but I do also think that MLS is going to try and fight this in court. And what I've been reading is that they're going to, and this is going to make MLS haters' head explode. What they're going to do is basically own the fact that they're franchises and say that we're not moving the team. We're closing one branch and opening the branch up somewhere else. It'd be the equivalent of me shutting down the McDonald's. So, well, hell, I'll use a different example. There's a Starbucks around the corner from me that closed recently. There's no way you could have stopped that Starbucks from closing based on this law if it was, a sports team, or the fact that I was in Ohio. But either or, you know what I'm saying. It's just a branch. It's a branch, and they went, this is not profiting at the level that we want, so we're going to move it to some other location where we think it will. It makes sense. It's not going to profit in this neighborhood because this neighborhood kind of resists that sort of stuff. So nonetheless, I live in a hipster neighborhood. What are you going to say?
Joe's Coffee is doing well, though. Joe's Coffee with organic soy milk is doing pretty good in your neighborhood, though.
It'd be more like Mario's Coffee in this neighborhood, but at any rate,
Mario.
Exactly. Or Benfica Cafe. That would be what would be doing well in my neighborhood.
I could go for some natas right now. Yeah, give me some natas.
There you go. Alas. This idea that they're going to fight it this way is likely the case. Look, any legal opinion that I've read on this, and there's been limited, but what I have read sort of suggests that this is not anywhere close to anything other than gray, which the law often is, that no one is sure whether this would be successful or not. If it's not successful, I think that it's going to, put serious sort of questions on whether the law would ever be successful and whether or not it's just not just window dressing, right, to make fans feel right. But it's another.
I was going to say the part of the lawsuit that actually catches my attention is the kind of like the description of what a social contract is between a club and their fans, saying, look, the club here, yes, you're the owner of the club, but the club is the community, and if you want to move the club, you got to give us a fair chance to buy it. And that being said, we have heard rumors over the last 2 or 3 months. There has been groups in Columbus and Ohio that did approach PSV, Precourt Sports Ventures, with the opportunity and maybe possibility of buying that franchise and that club to keep it there. So if if example it wasn't received or looked at or studied properly or just maybe even considered, maybe there's something to the law there. Like, look, we actually have groups interested that offered you very fair proposal, maybe a better asking price that you would get, and you're saying no because you just want to keep it. So then maybe the law could force the sale there. But I think you're right on the other side of this, where Major League Soccer and their army of lawyers are probably going to fight this for PSV to make sure that there's not a precedent being set, because then any state, there's a few states that actually has the same law, especially a state that lost their team, like Baltimore, like Ohio, and there's a few others. You don't want to create that precedent, because then you might lose the control of where your teams are. You know what I mean? If you cannot decide where a team is or not, and if by law they say, look, you got to sell to that group and you're going to stay in that market, you kind of lose a bit of the direction of your entire league. Not saying it's good or not. I'm not taking judgment here. Just saying, if I was on MLS's side, I would want the control, and that control will be decided by lawyers, and they will fight this. But at least if you are a Columbus Crew fans, it's one argument on your side at least, and you have a law. We'll see if that law is upheld, especially when you're looking at this as a national level, where it's not just Ohio, though. You're taking the team, and the team is just not Ohio. They might actually fight this way. Look, it's an Ohio team, but headquarters in New York. It's Ohio only by name, not by right. So there's a lot of possibilities with this lawsuit.
Yeah, look, the social contract, something we talk about a lot here, and it certainly is. It challenges the notion of how we organize sports leagues in this country. If they were to lose, if MLS and Precourt were to lose this, it certainly would challenge the notion of how we organize professional leagues in North America. And I'm not getting into a pro-rel thing here, but just the sense that they're owned essentially by their affiliations or their franchises. They're, no different than the subway down the street, right? Like that's how they operate right now. But if they were to be successful in blocking one of these things, they're sort of putting a legal precedent out there that they are different than the subway down the street, which we all understand, internally that they are different. We don't have that Starbucks around the corner from me. As much as I'll miss getting the occasional peppermint tea, it's not really, I don't have an emotional attachment to it, but TFC, I do, right? So, or even hell, if the Argos were to lose, as much as we make fun of it here, I'd be sad for the city, even though no one really cares anymore. But still, there's a history there.
I'll be sad for those 20 people. Like, they'll be really sad.
Yeah, I'd feel bad for Tibor. And that's a joke for the 20 people that are listening to this that don't know Tibor. But at any rate, it would be. It's an interesting case. I don't know how successful it's going to be. I think this is more part of the public pressure to force him to sell. I don't think that the state of Ohio really wants to take this to law. They don't really want to test the law, because if it fails, as I said, then the precedent's the opposite. It's going to, show that this law is nothing but decoration. And if, in the same front, it's going to be expensive to take it to the end. I think, like most legal procedures that happen in most parts of the Western world nowadays, this is designed as part of the public campaign to shame Precourt into selling it. And look, I think that is the likely positive scenario for Crew fans, is not that Precourt stops this move. It's that one of two things happens. Well, two things happen in combination. Is that Austin, which is already kind of happening, starts to reject them. Says, we don't want them. We're not building you a stadium.
Not just that. They're like, we don't want you that way. We kind of feel bad for our brothers in Columbus. We're a nice city here in Austin. We don't necessarily want to take from Paul to give to John,
Yeah, well, and that's part of the strategy of the Save the Crew movement. The ones that, a lot of Save the Crew people are just fans that are just like, Save the Crew. That's all that starts and stops there. But there are people within that movement that are savvy, and they know exactly what they're doing. And part of what they're doing is to try and put pressure on the average Austin person to shame them into, like, why would you take us? Why would you hurt us?
They're crew shaming. That's new.
Well, yeah, I don't blame them. It's exactly the process that I would have went, is to appeal to their decency as a soccer fan to soccer fan, and that's what's happening, and that is, I think, helping fight the fight on the front in Austin. In Columbus, I think what it is finding, and they're doing this as well. Like the fans are working to find proof that there is money in the city that Precourt is failing to chase, is failing to get. So he's not utilizing the market to its fullest to try and disprove this idea that it's a failing market. The problem that they face when it comes to league-wide stuff, we talk in the bubble. We talk about the bubble all the time in the show. We're in the bubble. We know we're in the bubble. In the bubble, it is 90% opposed to the Crew moving. Outside the bubble, it's 90% oblivious that the Crew might move, and that's what they have to fight.
I thought you were going to say 90% for the move. Like, nobody cared that much, so when you say 90% oblivious, yeah, that's probably right.
Well, I was on Vocal Minority last night. It hasn't gone out yet, so I won't spoil it too much. But I was on Vocal Minority last night, and we were talking about Save the Crew stuff, because Columbus was playing Toronto, obviously. And Kristen was saying that how she tried to start to Save the Crew chant intersection, and no one tuned in, to which I responded to her, that's because they probably didn't even know what you were talking about. And that is the issue that they're facing outside of the very small, loud but small bubble that exists is on their side. But to stop a move like this, you would need from just pure public pressure, you would need your universal resistance towards it amongst general fans league-wide. And the simple fact is that, the day after the Crew moved to Austin, if that happens, 90% of people that go to MLS stadiums are going to go, oh, this is a new team. When did that team come in? Yeah, they might even take them a year to figure out that Columbus isn't there.
Whatever happened to the Crew?
They moved to Austin.
Oh, that's too bad. But Austin's got a new kit. It looks good. I like it.
Yeah, well, and North American fans are inclined to just accept the fact that teams move. It's not like it is in the rest of the world where, MK Dons is still vilified, right?
We still talk about Wimbledon and MK Dons like it happened yesterday. Was it, 50 years ago?
Well, yeah, and the move too there, like that's the difference in philosophy, the difference in understanding is just like they moved like 10 miles. Like it's not a massive mile.
They haven't moved 10 states more west.
They wouldn't change their name if that happened here.
Well, here it wouldn't be even controversial. It would be like, yay, we're getting a new stadium. Just go a little further. That's exactly what it would be here. All right. We'll keep an eye on that situation, and there's going to be more details to come. But that lawsuit was deposited last night and is now going to be worked towards, and the defense will be built by PSV and MLS. And Ohio and Columbus will build the prosecutor's case. And that will be interesting to keep an eye on. And it might be the Hail Mary. Would you call this lawsuit the Hail Mary? Would you call this lawsuit the last-ditch effort before you raise the white flag, or the yellow one in this case?
No, I think this is part of an ongoing strategy to stop the move, to force a sale. It's to force a sale. I don't think it's to stop the move. I think that I was talking to Rudy Schuler about this in the press box on Saturday, and we sort of agreed that it's starting to move more towards it's maybe 50-50 now, whereas it was maybe 80-20 that they would move at the end of the last season. I think it's maybe 50-50 right now that Precourt is just going to sell. He's just going to throw the keys on the table at some point, and that's going to leave MLS, the league, in a situation where it's going to have to decide what to do. Now, that doesn't, if he throws the keys on the table, MLS could just move the team to Austin up and move it themselves, right?
But they could give him the new franchise. Like, forget about Detroit, forget about Sacramento and Cincinnati. Austin gets the second one.
Well, that's essentially what happened. Like when San Jose moved, we weren't podcasting. I wasn't podcasting at the time when San Jose shut down. But I wasn't. CFC wasn't in the league yet. But they shut down for 2 years, and basically that was it. Is that they went, we can't deal with this. We need a new stadium. They shut things down. They moved the existing franchise to Houston, and they said, figure the stadium out. We'll give you a team. I could see something like that happening in Columbus too, where Precourt walks away. The league goes, okay, we're shutting down operations. We're going to maintain the name and the rights to the region. If we get the stadium situation figured out, we'll put a team back in. But until such time, we're just going to cease operations or move that existing franchise somewhere else to San Jose or San Antonio or wherever. San Jose, they're not going to move it to San Jose. 2 teams in San Jose, that'd be hilarious.
They can barely keep one.
I meant to say San Antonio. Yeah, no, but I could see that happening. If Precourt were to throw the keys on the table, no one's really talked about this yet. I could see MLS absolutely going, well, we're not going to operate this team, but what we do is we'll say, we've got this existing slot. We're going to move it here. Maybe it's Austin. Maybe it's San Antonio. Maybe it's Cincinnati. Cincinnati's the same state. That might make some sense for them. Yeah. It allows them to sort of get around some of that sort of prickly sort of stuff they've got going on with expansion right now. Maybe Sacramento might get that team.
Yeah, Duane, the lawsuit might be might be dismissed because it's a state law, right? So, example, Precourt's like, okay, we're moving the team to Austin, but there's one coming in Cincinnati next year anyway. So it's basically just a branch moving from Columbus to Cincinnati. So this can stay, and I'll take my stuff, and I'll move to Austin. Yeah, maybe that's how it's going to go down. Maybe Cincinnati will be part of that equation, at least in the eyes of the law. Like, Cincinnati's getting a team anyway, so there's no ground for this lawsuit. That could probably be how this is going to be resolved. If you're MLS, this is going to be what your defense case is. It's, we're just moving to Cincinnati. It's not a big deal. It's just a few 100 miles away, not even. And look, it's just the team's not moving. It's just rebranding.
Yeah, there's a lot of different. MLS has the power here. They really do. Columbus has the sort of moral power, but that moral power only resonates with, as I said, the bubble. So we'll see. It's an interesting approach, and obviously, we don't hide our bias when it comes to this. We don't want them to move. We think it's wrong. Yeah. And I've had my battles with Crew fans through the years, and I'm still fully on their side here. So there you go.
Yeah, let's take a very small break, and when we come back, we'll just preview a bit of the Champions League return games of today.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at Soccer Today SPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
The name on the marquee is PSG versus Real Madrid. Well, there's one guy missing. He's in Brazil somewhere. Just got operated on. Just got a surgery. A little more, a bigger injury than we expected. Neymar will not take part in the second leg. But does it change anything? Can Paris score 2 goals today to just level it up and maybe take advantage on away goals, if that is the case? Or can they even score 3 today?
The way you just said Paris there maybe reminded me of the clip of Zlatan going, Je suis Paris.
Je suis Paris.
French.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, anyway. All right. Does it change anything? Well, yeah. It sort of takes the comeback off the table, if you ask me. 3-1 down. I mean, that third goal was killer for PSG, and it was sort of a killer for anyone who wanted new blood in the Champions League a little bit. I mean, Real Madrid, let's do the Ric Flair statement here. To be the man, you got to beat the man, and PSG ain't beating the man so far, right?
Well, they're getting close too. They won 11 Champions League? They've won 11. There's only 5 away from Ric Flair's titles. Only 5 away from Ric Flair's record. Woo!
Yeah, exactly. And look, the more this season plays, like Real Madrid has had a tough season domestically. Barcelona, we didn't talk about Atleti Barca on the weekend, where Barca with that 1-0 win and Messi's 600th career goal.
You know what we didn't talk about too? Ballou's on the bench for Barcelona A today. Never mind B. Ballou's on the bench for the Copa Catalunya today. Yeah, that's something
for the Copa Catalunya. But yeah, well, no, certainly it's the Copa Catalunya is. It's, for those who don't know, it's like a city cup or a state cup. So
like
it's
teams,
lower.
Yes.
Yeah, Espanyol and Girona, whatever. There's some teams there, but it's a low level competition. But traditionally speaking, if you look at a lot of the stars of Barcelona over the years, they've made their debut on in that competition when they were young, right? So it is not insignificant that he's playing that for sure. But yeah, to go back to that game on the weekend, which was, Barca just showed its power. Barcelona is very, very good this year. So how much of Real Madrid struggles with the fact that Barca is so good, although they're 5 points behind Atleti, which I think frustrates them more than the fact that they're losing to Barcelona, because they don't want to lose to their city Madrid rivals. And that's like a slap in the face. Losing to Barcelona is like angry, and that's, you never want to, but it's a slap in the face to also below Atleti. So this is all they have, right, in their mind. Like, there's no other competition that matters to them. Finishing third and getting the Champions League spot, whatever. They just want to.
That's like consolation prize. Or that's like the participation trophy for Madrid. Like, okay, you got a spot in the Champions League. Like, no kidding. Really? Thanks. I'm expected to do that.
Yes, exactly. So that's going to be something that... No, look, does PSG have a chance? They have to score early, and then you go from there, right? I mean, they scored the away goal, so there is obviously a 2-0 win would put them through. So that's kind of how they have to approach this. But losing Neymar is obviously going to impact their ability to do that. The other game... Is there any point talking about the other game?
The other game's over. FC Porto is 5-goal down, traveling to Anfield. This is not going to end well today.
Yeah, I don't even know what you do if you're in a situation like, if you're a Porto fan. Like, I'm sure that if you're
you put players that don't even play your league. You put players that just signed with the club, players that are coming back from injury. You're like, hey, you're the son of our captain. You want to play? You want to play soccer? Go play.
I'm sure that there's, well, the other thing too is you're absolutely right. Maybe not the C team, but you put your reserves out and go, okay, fight for a spot, because you don't want to embarrass the club with like a 10-0 aggregate or something like that. So you go, let's play with a little pride, guys. And you guys, if you put the starters out there, they're going to be like, I don't want to get hurt. If you put the guys that are trying to get onto the starting position, they might fight a little harder, right? And Liverpool's likely to rotate their squad too. So that game will be, whatever. Anyone watching that game, hell, if I was a Liverpool fan, I wouldn't watch that game today.
Exactly. Hey, and thanks to DAZN, now you can actually watch the PSG Barcelona game today, which wouldn't be the case if we were not on DAZN.
Exactly. And yeah, well, I just said that. I'm facing the same situation tomorrow. Am I going to watch Spurs Juve or am I going to watch City Basel? City's up 4-0. I'll probably have both screens up. Is the answer. But
the sound will be the other one, but City you'll still be watching.
Yes, exactly. So the PSG look, that was the fixture we all wanted to see going into this, and it's. I know it was surprising this third goal. Look, the third goal came late too. It's been so long and so much has happened in between that I almost have to struggle to go back to it. But the game that I'm most interested in watching in this round is the second leg of Sevilla United. Now, part of that is my own sort of he, but United at a Europe Day is a national holiday in my house. But anyway. Alas, we'll watch that one. And Barca Chelsea too is interesting too in terms of the 1-1. Obviously, it'd be a massive upset there. Unfortunately, Besiktas, that one's done. So look, the quarterfinals is when this thing. We said that this is the problem with the Champions League this year is we keep saying it's going to heat up next round. It's going to heat up next round. And outside of a couple fixtures in this round, it really hasn't heated up. Barca Chelsea.
PSG and Madrid are going to be a dud. Maybe our expectations were a little too high.
Yeah, there's three competitive fixtures. Well, four, I guess, and one's the Roma one, Shakhtar Roma, which is not a marquee, right? But so that's 2-1 there for Shakhtar. But Barca Chelsea at 1-1, United Sevilla at 0-0. That was a dud game more than anything exciting though. And then of course Spurs Juve is probably your best game of the tie, which is tomorrow as well. But those are, the quarterfinals, though, when you look at this, if the teams get through that we're looking at to go through, there will be some high-profile matchups in the next round. So hopefully that quarterfinals will be when this really kicks off this year. It's been not a great Champions League. Let's be fully admitted of this.
No, it's been just part of the course. It hasn't kicked up, and we'll see what the quarterfinals, semi, and final leaves us. And the final usually is a dud, too, so... We got ourselves 2 home and away series to see if this year's Champions League is actually interesting. And so far, I'd have to say there's too many clubs in it. Yeah, well, that's been a battling cry for years. The final in a World Cup year is always kind of a weird one too, because it's the team that it happens earlier. This kind of the players, some of them the Champions League is their biggest prize. I mean, for most of them, it's unrealistic for all but the very few, even on the top teams, of winning a World Cup. So the Champions League is going to be their highest priority. But there's always a weird sort of split attention that happens because you're only 2 weeks away from the World Cup kicking off at the point where the Champions League final happens too. You don't want to get injured. Of which, example, Barcelona's in the final. You're Lionel Messi. You never won a World Cup yet. You got maybe 1, if not 2, left in you.
You do have. You got 1 chance left.
Yeah, 1 chance. It's now or never. So, if you're Messi, you're in the Barcelona, you're in the Champions League final. Do you go all out and you're trying to go for that run? And if you feel your hamstring, you know what I mean? It does come into your psyche when you're having other goals. And we never talk about this, but mentally for athletes, it's difficult when you have to peak, and then 2 weeks later it starts another tournament that you have to peak a month later. It's difficult timing here.
For sure. All right, quickly, Kevin, before we wrap up the show for today, a couple of housekeeping things I want to put out there. For those of you that are yelling at us that we're not putting women's coverage on this, the She Believes Cup and Cyprus, we actually will be focusing quite a bit of attention tomorrow to both She Believes and Cyprus. Not Cyprus. Algarve. Yeah, I'll talk about Cyprus if you really want. But there's no one that follows in there.
There's no more tournament there. So it's a nice outing. It's a nice place to visit.
Well, there is. It's just the third tier tournament now. But so that we'll get some attention for that tomorrow. The Ottawa Fury fans, I put this out on the feed yesterday, but we will have, I think, a pretty significant and fun show for you on Thursday where we preview the Ottawa Fury's season. And then I haven't talked to Kevin about this yet, but either Friday or Monday we'll look a little bit deeper at the USL as a whole. It's a tough thing to preview because there are 7,322 teams in it.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a lot of teams.
But I'll book one of our normal guests, and we'll have a conversation about the USL as a whole coming down. Well, basically the way you cover the USL is you can't cover the whole league. You have to cover the East or the West. You have to be a specialist in one of them, which they play kind of a separate schedule anyway. But we'll do something down the next week. But for sure, the Furies preview, we have Kyle Porter, a Canadian player who's played for all but the Impact now in terms of Canadian teams that are currently going. Nice. So there you go.
And we'll have we'll have Kyle on the show on Thursday 10 a.m. for Soccer Today, and Five Rings will be recorded a bit later on the day. And as always, you can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. We'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. with our discussion about women's soccer with Jonathan Tannenwall. We'll talk about the She Believes Cup, the Algarve Cup, and Duane, we don't say this often enough. Canada is champion. Canada has raised the trophy yesterday. Canada has beaten Korea in the final of Algarve Cup.
Kevin.
What?
That they didn't win because of that. They lost the first game of the group stage.
Oh, geez. It's so weird, that tournament.
Yeah, well, actually, I can tell you quickly. Canada will play in the third place game because they lost that first league. They will play the lowest group winner in the third place game. I believe that'll be Thursday. So, yeah, we got lots to talk about there.
When you finish first, you should win.
Well, they didn't finish first. They finished second in the group, though.
I missed that one. Well. You see how excited I get when I think Canada wins something?
What the important thing about that game was that Christine Sinclair had a brace, and she's now only 12 goals behind Abby Wambach. Heading into she scored 3 goals in the tournament so far. She needed to score goals in this tournament for me to believe that she had a chance to overtake her. Now I think she does. Had she not scored in this tournament,
I know you believe, but does she believe?
We'll find out tomorrow when we talk to Jonathan Tannenwall. All right, Kevin, say goodbye.
Until tomorrow, as always, have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.